Hey guys, welcome back to another video. We're here this morning at Bishan Park. This is one of my favorite places to shoot the sunrise in Singapore. And this is what we're looking at. This is Recycling Hill. And as you can see here in the foreground, it has this very nice bushes along these steps. These steps kind of lead out into the background where we have this huge metallic structure. Not quite sure what this structure is about, but it makes a pretty good subject for sunrise photography. As you can see, the sun goes right through it certain times of the month, of the year I mean. So we're going to try to get a few shots and see what we can get from this. So this is a pretty cool place. I actually come here once a year just to get a shot of the sunrise, and as you can see, I have a few variations of the shot. So this is the first time I'm here in 2023. I'm gonna see if I can get something different today. So one of the reasons why I like to shoot here is because of these stony steps that we have here in the foreground. They lead into the distance, and it kind of leads into the same direction as where the metal sculpture is, which is nice. So I'm going to try to find a composition that works that out, as well as having the sun in the frame. So I've been shooting around for a bit, and this is kind of the current composition. As we move around from the left to right, you notice that the shape, or rather the perspective of the sculpture changes. And I kind of prefer this angle over here where the sculpture looks thinner and doesn't take up so much space horizontally. But as I go closer towards the left, the tree on the right becomes more and more visible. So it's kind of a mixture of what you want to get in the photo. Hey guys, we are back, and we're looking at the photos that we took at the Recycling Hill some days back, and you can see here that I've taken quite a number of different compositions. I have some that's taken over from this side where the sculpture looks thinner and more narrow, and then I've shifted more over to the right side where you can actually see more of the sculpture, but unfortunately the tree comes out on the right, and that kind of gets in the way of the composition a little bit. So I've already edited some of these shots, as you can see, and pretty much this is the chosen composition at the end, and I'm going to show you guys how I managed to get there. And I have another different alternative shot here with the starburst right beside the sculpture over here. So the first thing you notice that a lot of these images, they look very dark, almost as though they are underexposed. But do take a look at the histogram. This is actually taken intentionally so that we do not have any blown out areas in the image. So for example, this shot right here is actually the same shot as this. So this is the same as this. And you can see that it's actually not underexposed. The key thing is that we do not want to blow out any of the bright areas, especially where the sun is. So I'm just gonna do a quick edit using this image, just to show you guys what I would do with the image once I get it, once I get back to editing. So first off, I am going to adjust my exposure over here. You can see it looks very dark, so I'm gonna increase my exposure just a little bit, and I'm gonna bring down the highlights and the whites, and that looks good. I'm gonna increase the shadows and the blacks. So you can see now it looks pretty alright. Your histogram looks like everything's within range. You don't have anything crushed in the shadows, you're not losing any data there, and you don't have any blown out highlights. I do like this little detail of the bird flying in the sky over here, so I'm glad that I managed to catch that by luck. So the next thing that we are going to do is that we are going to just increase the clarity and the texture just a little bit, and I'm gonna leave that right there. Let's go to transform, and let's hit auto just to see how it straightens the image. Now pay attention to the buildings on this side, because that's what's really bothering me at this point. So I'm gonna hit auto, and it looks like it does a pretty decent job of straightening it. So I'm gonna leave it as it is, and I'm gonna bring this image now into Photoshop. So I'm gonna right click and edit in Photoshop. Alright, so we have it here in Photoshop, and you guys know I love to use Nik Color Efex Pro, so let's bring it up. Alright, first thing as usual, I like to play around with Pro Contrast. So the one thing to take note is that even though you can see on the histogram that we do not have any blown out highlights, I am very concerned that if I increase the contrast, it's going to have a lot of blown out detail in the highlights. So I'm going to increase this slider just to protect the highlights a little bit, and I'm going to add a little bit of dynamic contrast. And you can see as I add in this dynamic contrast, it really brightens up the shadow areas in the image. And a little bit of correct contrast, so it really brings out that pop. I'm going to correct the color cast. Alright, so that looks good. I'm going to increase the highlight slider just a little bit just to protect those white points. And that's good enough for me. I'm happy with that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I kind of like the yellowish sunlight glow that was present that day, so I'm going to add in a skylight filter. So that's a little bit too strong. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. The main thing is I want a little bit of yellow and a little bit of orange right in the clouds. So I'm going to add this in, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a V-edging by adding this darken lighten filter. So the first thing I'm going to do is to place the center right where the sun would be, and that's a little bit too much. Alright, so I'm going to bring down the center luminosity a little bit and just soften the V-edging because it's a bit too strong for my taste. That looks good. Alright, I'm going to add in a little bit of saturation just to see what we get. So yeah, the colors are really popping with that. Now we don't want to overdo it, so I'm just gonna play around with the warmth as well. Alright, that looks good. Next thing that I want to do is let's see here, a little detail extractor maybe. Alright, that's awesome. So that looks really, really good. I'm going to hit OK and let it do its work. Alright, so you can see the photo now is a lot more dramatic. There's a lot more action going on in the sky and as well as in the bushes in front. You can see how sharp it is. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, which I probably should have done earlier just to get rid of all this I don't know what this thing is. These strange artifacts in the sky. Oops, let me clone that out. And let's see if we have any more of those. Right, that looks pretty good. Now, as I am zoomed in here, I'm sure you notice that the image looks pretty grainy. That's because I've done quite a lot of processing on this image already. If you can recall, in its original form, it was pretty dark, and I brought back quite a lot of light into the image. So one thing I'm gonna do to fix that, as well as to add a little bit of dreaminess to the image, is that I'm gonna add an uptone effect to the image. So first thing, I'm gonna add in a levels layer. Now this can be exaggerated a little bit, but we're not gonna apply it full opacity into the image, so we don't have to worry about that first. And I'm gonna duplicate the layer, go to filter, Gaussian blur. I'm gonna set it to roughly the same megapixels as my Nikon Z7 II has. Alright, I'm gonna put this into a folder, and I'm gonna reduce opacity down to less than 20%. As you can see, the image now looks very different. It looks very soft and dreamy, and most of that noise is gone, even though we still have a little bit of that, and we can clear that up if we want to. But in the meantime, what I want to do first is to bring back a bit of sharpness to the image. So I'm going to duplicate my background layer again, go to filter, other, high pass, 4.6 pixels, and I'm going to change this to overlay. And that reminds me, for the optom effect area, I'm also going to change it to lighten, so it's only affecting the brighter parts of the image. So I think that looks pretty good. Now I like the contrast in the clouds, so I'm going to try to boost them up a little bit. So I'm going to do a dodge and burn layer. So the first thing I'm going to do is to add a new layer. And I'm going to go to gray. Mode is going to be overlay. I'm going to fill with 50% neutral color. Alright, I'm going to make sure that my brush is white and black here. I'm going to change the brush to, and I'm just going to brush in the areas that I want to be brighter. So don't worry if it looks really strong right now, because we're going to fix that in a moment by changing the opacity. So if I bring it down, it looks a little bit more realistic. Alright, you get the idea. And if I want to change to dodging, if I want to change to burning or dodging, whichever is the darker one, I always mix up the two. Just change the brush to the black brush, and just brush in the areas that you want to burn, to make darker, so to speak. I'm going to do a little bit over here, maybe a bit on the clouds here, and I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to leave it as it is now. I'm going to save this image and bring it into Lightroom. Alright, we're back in Lightroom, and one thing I really like to add in all my images is a little bit of magenta. So I'm going to go ahead and change the white balance with the magenta slider right here. And I'm going to cool down the image as well, just a little bit. Alright, it looks good. Okay, and one thing I really like about the new and updated Lightroom is that you can go to the masking tool here and you can select the sky, and it pretty much does a really good job selecting the sky for you. You can increase the contrast a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Let's see if I want a little more magenta in the sky. No, that's too much. Alright, just a little blue. Can reduce the clarity as well. Just a little bit. Okay, so that looks really good, and I'm pretty happy with this image so far. I think that the greens are a little bit too strong, so let me bring it down in the green saturation layer. Alright, so that looks good. I'm pretty happy with this image, and I think this is it. This is going to be my edit of this place for this year, and let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. Remember to like and subscribe, and shalom, goodbye.